Eddie, thank you so much for joining me. Today I really want to talk about your journey to the top, because I think over the last couple of weeks there's been so much noise about English coaches in the game, and you are probably the most high profile English coach. So how does it feel to be an English coach of that level right now in the game?
My nationality is something that I don't really think about. So I've loved my path to get to this point, and I'm very proud to be associated with English coaches and trying to boost the profile of every English coach, and also a big advocate for the lower leagues. And that pyramid that we have is, for me, it's the best in the world. The depth of football we have is incredible, and I think there is a genuine pathway there for coaches to make it to the Premier League. So I'm a big sort of pusher of all of those things, really.
Yeah, you spoke a little bit there about the pathway and working your way up all the way from like League Two to the Premier League. Does that add more pressure on you, like going through that pathway to the top, or do you think it helps starting low and getting all the way up there?
I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think that this was very much my unique journey, really. I think I had no visions of anything other than just trying to do the best job that I could when I started in League Two. It was all about initially just trying to stabilise the club in the division. I had no thoughts of managing through the leagues. Of course, you hope and you dream maybe that's possible, but I think it's very small steps initially, and also just trying to find out whether management was for me, which there was no certainty in that. But I found through time that I really enjoyed it and loved to coach and loved to develop players, and that's led me to this point now.
What do you think is the hardest division to coach in? Because obviously you've done it all the way through. Obviously a lot of people at home will be thinking the Premier League, but I can imagine League Two comes with its own challenges, as does League One.
All the leagues are very, very difficult. I mean, I don't think there's a league that we've ever thought, you never have the game fixed in your head. You've never reached that moment where you think, I'm okay now, because the game changes so quickly. And I'm a big person to respect the league that you're in. League Two is very difficult. Of course, it depends on where you take over, and I took over a team that was towards the bottom. But very quickly, I think momentum and confidence and all sorts of things, you can change your path quite quickly. And I loved that journey through the leagues. At the time, you're engrossed in sort of the day-to-day activities, so you don't really get a chance to reflect back and look back. It's only now you can do that, really. Absolutely loved it. And if you were to ask me the hardest, it would be the Premier League, because the level is so high, and one lapse in concentration at this level, and it can cost you the game.
Yeah, a lot has been made of that. You spoke about pathway there up to the Premier League recently, and a lot of people have said, that pathway is so hard for English coaches. Did you find that getting up to the Premier League, is the pathway an issue for you amongst English coaches?
I think for any team to get promotions from any league is very difficult, and to get into the Premier League is the hardest of all. The competition that you have, the huge clubs in the Championship, you go through the list of clubs in the Championship, it's a roll call really of former Premier League teams. You look at the managers in the Championship, full of high-class Premier League managers, or up-and-coming managers, whatever, however you look at it. I think it doesn't matter what nationality you are, it's irrelevant really. The competition is high, but it has to be. The English football is one of the best in the world for a reason. The challenge is there for everybody to embrace and to grab, and the key thing for me all through my management career has been to develop myself, and it's been to try and learn every single day, and I'm still doing that at this very moment.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you speaking recently about learning from other coaches. I think you went and worked or saw Thomas Tuchel coach, didn't you? I've read a little bit, potentially you went and saw Diego Simeone work. What was that like, going and seeing other coaches and seeing how they work behind the scenes? Yeah,
it's not something that you get the chance to do when you're managing in the Premier League yourself. So it's really something you have to do when you're either out of work or you're in the lower leagues. And I was very keen to get round and try and see as many people as I could when I was in League Two, League One, because you sort of know there's a big wide world out there. There's high class coaches in every league, and even travelling abroad, because for me there's so much to learn from Spanish football, German football, some amazing leagues very close to us actually. So it's about getting out and seeing as much as you can, whatever you're allowed to see, really. Because I think you can always, like, I'll always have my not fixed, but my way of seeing the game.
Yeah.
But you can just add little ideas, and that's all you're looking for, is fresh stimulus to try and help you on your way, really.
Was there anybody that you, when you were on your travels, you thought, wow, that is like novel, that's very different to how we do it over in England?
No, I always think you're never hugely surprised, because the game of football does evolve very quickly, but it's still fundamentally the same game. But it's usually, I look at when I go to see people work, it's the cultures that they create, and you can see that really strongly. So whether that's how the players act, whether that's the body language of the coaches, the players, the relationships, the feel of the environment you're in, they're the things you probably take more than the actual training sessions. There may be one or two things from the training sessions, but very rarely are you blown away by anything you see. But I'm sure no one will be blown away by what they see with me. It's the game of football is very hard to, totally recycle everything.
So do you have people come in and you're allowed, they're like, other coaches are allowed to come in and see how you work as well? Does that happen here at Newcastle?
It does, but I'd say rarely. Normally it would be because of a previous relationship.
Right,
so I'm very keen for my former players to come up and see me. I think that's important for me to keep those relationships and also help them on whatever they want to do next. And as I say, previous relationships, yes, of course. I'm always happy to see old friends and old coaches and people that have helped me on my journey. So yeah.
I've always wondered, like, are you allowed to speak to other managers about tactics and things? Does that happen between coaches? When I interviewed Wayne Rooney a few weeks ago, he said that he spoke to Michael Carrick about some of the things he was working on. And does that happen at the Premier League level?
No, I'd say not so much now. I mean, I think
too closely guarded.
Well, yeah, to a degree, but also I think the sort of meetings you have after games have diminished. That used to be sort of a ritual that happened, and it was something that I was strong on in my early management days. But I think as it's gone on, and it's sort of slowly creeping out of the game, which is a shame to a degree.
So there's not so many sort of Sir Alex Ferguson coming for a bottle of red wine after the game where people get together and just have a chat. That doesn't happen really anymore.
Mixed. I'd say it depends on your relationship with the person.
I also wanted to talk to you about some of the young coaches in the game, because you yourself broke through so young. I think you were the youngest coach in the EFL, weren't you, at the time when you first came in? We see, Fabian Hertzler come in at 31 years of age. What do you think it's like for young coaches now? Do you think they're getting even more opportunity despite the young age?
Yeah, I don't think age is a barrier, and I never have. I think it's all dependent on the individual. And you see Fabian, as you say, his introduction to the Premier League has been very strong. It's been great to see someone with his energy and his ideas and the way he sees the game. I think it's great, and of course people of all ages have something to offer, whether that's a freshness and evolving the game in some way, or the experienced coaches that maybe have their philosophies more solidified, but though they work. So it's a really interesting balance between the two.
What kind of pressure does it bring being a young coach? Because obviously you can speak to this from real experience. Is it hard to manage players that are, sometimes older than you?
I think it's all down to your knowledge and your expertise, really. I think if you have a really strong view on the game and you have your beliefs that you're not going to waver from, I think just communicating that to the players, that's the sort of main aim of the job. And I think if you can do that in a really clear and effective way, the players will buy into you straight away. I think age is irrelevant. It's about your knowledge, and of course it's about you as a person. And
has that buy-in changed now? Do you have to kind of adapt how you work at Newcastle compared to how you first tried to get buy-in from players at Bournemouth? Is that a totally different situation?
It is, slightly in how we do it, because we have more resources now. But I think the fundamental is exactly the same. It's about the relationship between me and you, and I want you to do something and play the game in a certain way. Of course, that has to go with your strengths as a player. I have to try and get the best out of you and help you in your development. And if I can bring something that helps you, I'm sure that you'll look at me and go, right, I'll go with this guy because he's got my best interests at heart.
And do you think that comes down to sort of your training methods, or is that off the field? Because I see so much made now of sort of tactical innovation and training ground work. Is it a balance to be made, or is it more training ground or more off the field?
No, it's absolutely a balance, because I think the football player is just one part of the person. The player has so many different things going on in his lives. countless things could distract him from his ability to play football. So I think it's getting the balance right between the footballer, the person. I think as long as the footballer is able to concentrate and give his all to the game, then the tactical side, of course, and your individual game strengths naturally then take over as the most important part.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like I was speaking earlier to the camera guy actually about AI and how technology has evolved. It feels like the game's innovating so quickly. Is that something you're noticing as a coach? Because obviously you've been around football for so long now. It feels like we're at a really advanced stage right now.
I think it's changing all the time. Yeah, I think the way we evaluate the games, the data we have, huge numbers and graphs and all sorts that we get, which is great, and I think can really help you and the players make sense of what's happened. But I think also you still have to go back to your eyes and your emotions, because they're such a strong indicator of what's happened, and they're such a strong indicator of what will happen in the future. So I think there's still a balance to be had, and we try to get that balance right here, where we're data-led, but we're also following the human side, and we don't want to lose that. How
do you find that balance? Because like you said, the graphs, the numbers, like it must be overwhelming, not just for a player, but for a coach to be sitting there and with your analysts, and it's just numbers and spreadsheets and things. How do you find that balance?
Well, a lot of time it's about what you show the player, if anything, to be honest, because players are instinctive, and you want them to be instinctive when they enter the pitch. You don't want them thinking of numbers and graphs. That's never been how they've been brought up to play the game. They're brought up to play the game that they love. So I think a lot of it is taking the noise away and just letting the player be free, but of course around how you want to play the game.
Do you think players themselves are now more focused on numbers and things than when you were a player? Because I know that some players I speak to, they have their own trainers, they want to track their numbers, their blood pressure, like so detailed. That must be a big change for you as a manager.
Yeah, the only number I cared about was the mark I got in the paper.
Yeah, exactly. 8 out of 10.
Usually it wasn't great, so yeah, that was sort of the only numbers we cared about back then. I think now, I don't see the players necessarily data obsessed, and certainly not about the game. Maybe about their well-being and have their physical stuff. I mean, we didn't get physical numbers, certainly not in my early stage of my career. But now they'll regularly want to know what they've run in a game and all that stuff, which again can be helpful and can be unhelpful.
I mean, it's got to be better than focusing on the numbers in the paper, I suppose, because the pressure that is added from that sort of thing, compared to when you're not focused on 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, so binary. Do you think that's different now? Because I didn't think about that, but when you say it, like as a player, that must play on your mind a lot.
Yeah, and it was just one person's opinion, but I know there was certain teammates. Steve Fletcher was obsessed with his numbers ahead of anyone else. So I think you learn to just focus really on what you think is the most important thing. Of course, what your manager thinks. They're the two people that I think are the most important. That relationship is absolutely key. You can think you played well, but if your manager doesn't, you have a problem, and vice versa, really, because if your own opinion of yourself isn't as strong as maybe the manager sees your benefit and your strength. So you have to enter the pitch confident, and a lot of it, as I say, is scraping away the noise and letting the player be free.
It's interesting because those numbers, I suppose, from a noise perspective, kind of shifted away from newspaper 9 to social media abuse, isn't it? Like, do you think that pressure now for players is almost on a whole new level, because it's very difficult to escape, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think it's probably the biggest hurdle that a modern player now has to overcome, is not focusing on the outside noise, not focusing on the opinion of someone that really doesn't matter. And those voices can be very strong. Those voices can be overpowering if you allow them to be. So I think one of the key things for any player nowadays is to make sure that they're bulletproof from that, really, as in either not hearing it, not allowing themselves to hear it, making sure their family aren't giving them the general opinion, and just being really single-minded in whose opinions you respect.
Eddie, absolutely enjoyed that.
Thank you
so much.
Pleasure.